Working from home is great in some ways. And working from home while parenting has a whole lot of challenges. I remember during the pandemic, my kids were in the ninth and 10th grade in 2020, and thinking to myself, this is hard. Like, this is hard with children who are, somewhat emotionally mature and good kids. I cannot fathom what this would be like with young children in the home. My heart was just owing for the weight of that responsibility on so many parents all over the world. And for many of us as parents, working from home provides a great alternative, right? We can be here, we can go grab our kids from school when needed, but that doesn't mean that it comes without stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and pressure. And so in today's parent coaching session, you're going to hear from a mom, Jess, about her assessment of what was happening with her suddenly. I believe the word she used was obnoxious. I can't exactly. So in this parent coaching session, you're going to hear from this amazing mom, Jess, who has been noticing some new communication patterns from her 4-year-old daughter. And Delicia so beautifully unpacked what was actually going on. And when you hear what had been transpiring in the couple of weeks before this parent coaching session, you're going to be like, girl, you are actually handling this beautifully. Because when your kids are home and school gets canceled and kids get sick and they can't go outside because the weather is crappy and you've got to do work, can we all just acknowledge that that's hard and that it is okay that it doesn't always go okay? Listen in.
I think I have an inkling as to why, and we're struggling. But lately she has not only been interrupting, but she does this thing where when I'm trying to get her to do anything or talk to her about anything, she just goes, no, and like walks away. And it's like, it's one of those things. I'm like, child? Like, she's not like, I'm like, I tried very hard not to label my kids, but in that moment, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, why are you being such a brat? Like, you're so rude. I'm like, what is this? What is, and I've been trying to make sure, like we've been connecting with her more. I've told my husband, I think she needs a little wrestle time because he's been working a lot. And so he's been trying to implement more of that. But it just seems like there's pushback and just like, well, I'm not gonna. And I'm like, okay. And it's been really hard. I don't ever spank my kids or anything, but I haven't had even that thought for the longest time until probably 2 weeks ago. And I was like trying to clean their room with them. I have a 7-year-old also, and I was trying to clean the room with them. And that was probably the first time in a long time I got really like ragey mad. And I finally was like, we're not cleaning anymore. Like, I'm walking away. I'm not even going to bother trying this right now, because when I thought that, like, I just want to like yeet her. Like, I was like, nope, I'm not even going to touch this anymore. And after I yelled at her, we calmed down. I tried to reconnect. Like, I was like, okay, like I shouldn't have done that. She cried. We got right back to it. And as soon as we popped back up to do anything again, she was right back to it. And I was like, nope, not going to waste all afternoon doing this. So that's where we've been at. And I feel like I'm kind of like at my wit's end because I'm not really sure where to go with that.
Yeah. Okay.
For myself or for her. I don't know where. I'm just like, I don't know. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like where you're at now. It's like, this is happening. And what the hell is actually happening?
And now, right. Yeah.
But I appreciate the context you give me. And you started by saying, I have an inkling of why she does this. Can you share with me what that inkling is? Other than
So we have been snowed in for like 2 weeks, and we only just were able to get out of that. They're homeschooled, and school has been canceled. So our homeschool assistance has been canceled. And they played in the snow a little bit. So it's not like they weren't out at all, but we haven't been out except maybe twice in the past like couple of weeks. And one was like, I literally just took them to walk around Walmart for an hour and a half because I was like, they just got to get out of the house. They need to do something, bought them a toy just to, like have some fun. And so I know she's been cooped up and she's kind of just like picking fights a little more than usual.
Yeah.
But she's also always been my strong-willed child. And so she's one that I have tended to like butt heads with a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's if I'm not mistaken, she's the middle child, right? So she's between a 7-year-old and there's a baby as well.
Yeah. Yeah. She's almost 1. Yep.
Okay. So
and I know that too. That dynamic. I'm like, okay, I know she also is like fighting for attention, middle child syndrome. Like I'm trying to be mindful of all of these things. And yet I still feel so stuck when we get to these points because I'm like, I don't know, like I said, where to go with that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm going to clarify with them being homeschooled. Are you their homeschool teacher? Or when you say you've lost access to homeschool support, someone else comes in too?
I am their homeschool teacher, but we are also enrolled in like a co-op. So once a week, we can get with other kids. They have like little field trips or STEM activities that they can do so that we still have like some community around it.
Okay. All right. And in those spaces, then you're getting a little bit of break and they're getting to interact with somebody else and other children. Yeah. But that hasn't happened for a good few weeks now. So are you open to me sharing what I'm hearing and what I imagine I would be doing in that situation of what do we do now? Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm like, I need collaboration, I think.
Yeah. That's
in
what
my mind, I'm like,
yeah, I hear you. So ideas are popping into my mind. And when you did that, she's like, nah. And you're like, child, like, like, I want to know.
Feel it.
Yes. Tell me about that feeling. Like, what's that when she does that?
Like, I want to rage. Like, and it's so funny because I like obviously would never do this, but like in my head, I'm like, I just want to like chuck her. Like, I'm like, just throw. Like, I guess I'm like, I can't think of another way to put it, but I'm like, I just want to be like, just get away. It's driving me crazy. Like it's such a weird thing. And I usually like laugh about it because I'm like, obviously I'm not going to throw my child, but I can feel, I get hot.
Yeah.
Like I can feel my blood pressure rise and I just want to like blow my lid, like anger, inside out. I'm like, I always joke that that's like my dad. And now I'm like, I see it in me like, hey, I'm going to be anger right now. Like, don't walk away. That like fire, that's what I feel ready to come out. And she does that. It just, I don't get triggered.
Triggering a part of you. Yeah. And have you explored why that is such a trigger, whether it's the tone she says it in or just the audacity that she has?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because I feel like generally, like I try to like collaborate with them, right? Like, so if we're cleaning, like I will help with that, like whatever. And it's like my older daughter will help. And she's like the only one who wants to be like, meh. And it's that attitude. And I think it's the audacity of the attitude, like, I'm like, what are you like, why, what are you doing? Like, I just don't. And it just feels like very snotty. Yeah.
No, I get it. And I'm imagining that your older child is a little bit more cooperative. Like you're offering, I'm going to help you with your chores. I'm going to help you get cleaned up. And she's like, okay, thank you, mommy. And let's go ahead and do this.
They're polar opposites.
Yeah. So, and then that adds to the trigger of what the hell? Like, really?
Yeah.
So, so there's that. There's her attitude or her snarkiness. And it comes from having a strong will and her position in the family and, trying to establish like, this is me. Right. I'm going to stand out and be different. And me. And you have this experience of her being the strong-willed child. You said she's always been the one that you're going to battle with.
Right.
So.
And it hasn't always been that tone, though. The tone is a new thing.
It
is a new thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the tone on top of, and then you initially mentioned it was the interrupting that triggered you. Can you tell me a little bit about the interruption?
So the interrupting thing is more like cutting me off when I try, like, so when I try to talk her through any of her big feelings, when I try to get her to do anything, or if she's like upset with something, I'm like, okay, let's like go further. Like, why is this coming up? Like any kind of time we try to talk to her, she just literally just no, 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 no. And I'm like, so again, where do I go with that? Because she will not say a word. Like, and it doesn't matter if she's calm. She's just like, I don't know. I don't know. Nope. Like, I'm like, I don't know how to go deeper with her, because whether she's calm, mad, like it doesn't matter what state she's in. She's just like, I'm not cooperating with
She's
this.
not open to it. Yeah. So that makes me think, if she's saying no, and you say specifically when I try to talk her through her feelings, she's like, no, you're not getting it. It's like,
yeah, you can't hug her. You can't do like nothing. She's just like, mm-mm.
Yeah. Okay. So my mind immediately goes to safety, her sense of safety with her own feelings and perhaps being seen in her feelings. It sounds like she's created this very strong outside persona, right? I've got this attitude. I can say no. I don't have to do it, right? And that's been created for some reason. And I'm wondering where the lack of safety, if you can step inside her little body, can you imagine where she feels some sense of this is not safe to do?
Yeah. And it's her dad. They go back and forth every time any of them cry. He has a very hard time with that. And I've been trying to work on him with that. Like, okay, if it bothers you, that's fine, but like don't yell at them. Like just like be uncomfortable with it, but also it's okay for them to be upset, like, but he just wants to stop it. And so a lot of times, like, cause she'll cry and then she'll do this thing where if she's not being paid attention to enough, or if we're just like, okay, be upset, then she cries. Like she'll just kick it up a notch, and then he gets triggered and they fight over it. And as you were like talking about safety, I just all of a sudden was like, she's 4. And my oldest didn't get comfortable for crying until recently, because she would just close off and she does this little face and she'll like act like nothing's wrong. And so now I'm just wondering if maybe she's needing more time to learn where her safety is. Cause now my oldest will come to me when she's upset with dad, like, and that just, kind of crossed my mind. Like maybe she's not quite figured out where she's safe with it yet, I guess.
Yeah. So she's going through this experience of, it's pretty scary when mom or dad are triggered by my big emotions. And even though I don't even think she has the capacity to plan. Like, I'm crying now and they see me, they're allowing me to feel this, but they're not seeing me enough. So I'm going to scream. It's all instinctual for her, right? She's in a place of pain, in a place of fear, discomfort, disappointment, whatever it is that she's crying about. And it sounds like dad is unable or uncomfortable to be with her in that. Right. And she's trying to understand, well, how far do I go?
Right. Sometimes he's okay and sometimes he's not, more often than not, he's not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so that makes sense then, where she's learned how to know, right? Because when she's crying, it's a no. Don't do that. Stop that, right? Not now, not here, not that loud, whatever it is that she's being, the response she's receiving. So when you're asking her to do something or trying to get her cooperation, for her, I imagine it's just like, well, no, you guys say no to me. You shut me down, so I'm going to shut you down.
Right.
And I don't know where the tone or the attitude comes from, or if she's realized that this is another way that gets your attention, gets you activated. So she is getting you, but not in the way that maybe she wants to.
Right.
Is that making any?
I'm also wondering if like she's testing it, like testing the waters more too. Like, will I be able to like poke the bear, a little and see like where that, because I have tried to be more mindful too, like, especially with the cleaning thing. I'm like, maybe she feels like she's not getting enough help. Or like when she asks me to do something, I'm like, oh, get it yourself. Like I'm working or that's what. So I've been more mindful of trying to be like, okay, like I will do this for you just because I know you want me to do it, even though you're fully capable. And so, yeah, I wonder if there's like, yeah, if she's just not getting, like, she's not receiving, like she's not receiving it. So she doesn't want to reciprocate that.
Yeah. And that could be at 4 years old. It's right. She's being modeled how to behave. So in some way, she's perceiving your response and dad's response as the way she should respond. And she's
Right.
just doing what she's being taught to do. So
Right.
this goes to then, well, how do we teach her how to interrupt, how to respond in a respectful, kind manner or tone? And I used to work in a Montessori school. I owned one. So I had to teach a lot of children, and we had something called grace and courtesy. And that would be how we started every single day, with the grace and courtesy lesson. And I don't know if you're familiar with Montessori, but the children are taught how to interrupt, which is teachers working with somebody. If you need to speak to me, you place your hand on my shoulder and you wait until I look at you. And when I'm looking at you, then you can begin speaking. And they're little, they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. The 3 and 4-year-olds needed that lesson many times throughout the day because they've got this short-term memory. It's like, oh yeah, I know what to do. Then they go get work and they play. Like, teacher. And on my shoulder. Okay, now I can listen to you. So I'm wondering if she's had that lesson of how to.
Right. I like that because I do work full time also. And so a lot of times I'm like, you guys can get this. You guys are good. Like if you need me, they come in and out of my office all the time, and, they play during the day usually. But like, when they want a snack, I'm like, you can get a snack. They have a drawer that's full of their snacks. We've tried to like implement those things. But so I wonder if it's not, yeah, like obviously she's not intentionally being like, being the way she is. But I'm wondering if she's taking that as just well, mom just doesn't want to do it, rather than understanding the fact that I am still working and have a time. Like I can pause in a moment, but I'm still talking with someone at this moment, like, and so I'm wondering if that's unintentionally, obviously being modeled.
Yeah. And just maybe a lack of understanding. Like, what are the parameters? What, like, you have, I'm sure, a daily routine for homeschooling and play and, what's the expectation around interrupting mom while she's working and reading? So how do I interrupt when I come through the door? Should I knock on the door? Should I listen if she's speaking on the phone? Like, should I, and those
stop sign. Like actually it's right here. I have these little things with a green, a yellow, and a red, and I have that, but I never thought of like how to teach them to interrupt me. So it tells them when they can, like if it's yellow, they know they can come in. And then when I'm putting my finger up, they're like, but like, but I didn't think of like teaching them specifically how to interrupt when they do come in, like the one finger is not working because they're like, but, and I'm like, hang on.
Yeah. Because that one finger is like, yes, I'm coming. So they're like, okay, well, we'll wait until
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it doesn't have to be hand on the shoulder. You've got your little signs. And this yellow could mean you can come in and I can half listen to you and do what I'm doing.
Right.
Well, stop means I cannot hear you. I cannot look at you. So stop means don't come through now.
Right. And then, yeah, the one is that, but like we actually had seen the hand thing on Bluey, but not, they love Bluey, but not to the extent of like, okay, now this is when, like, so we tried to do the hand thing, but it was just put your hand. And then I know there was no like, okay, now there's a specific thing. Like when I look at you, then we can, like it was just like, they're like, okay, here's my hand.
Yes.
Hi. And I'm like, okay, I'll get to it, like, so.
Yeah. And another beautiful thing with that, because you reminded me, children would do that. And so another thing we would do with children we'd put our hand on their hand, We'd continue working with who we were working with. And then when we had a pause, we'd look at them. So we'd help them to, I notice you're here. I can feel you, but I'm not ready yet. And now I can hear you.
Right. I think like having that clear process. Cause we did the hand and then and then that's what he's like, I'll put my hand on your hand so I know you're there. But then that was that. And so then it's like, like knowing that signal of like when I turn and look at you, I think that there was just that little piece that just seemed like a barrier, that it was like missing. There was like, it blurred the lines a little too much.
Yeah. She's left in the abyss and her 4-year-old mind is like, what do I do now? I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Listen to me. I'm going to give you attitude. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one thing that you can explore. And it all goes back to creating safety for her. Like for her knowing what to expect, for her not being confused about, I can interrupt now and I don't now, or I can be sad and show my disappointment or my anger and it's okay. Like, mom's not going to, even though it's in your mind, I just want to pick up and chuck her, right? She doesn't need to know that, but she's feeling like, right? And like that's all in your body. It's communicating, even though you're not saying it.
Yes.
I like to feel safe in. I just gave her attitude, and look at her. She's solid, right? And that will go back to what's going to keep you solid in those moments.
Right.
Perspective. She's 4 years old. She's confused. She's been stuck in the house for 2 weeks. She's got a strong will. She was born with that. Like this is her. So how do we embrace that and also guide it so that we can all be living in this home together and interacting with one another?
Right. Yeah.
Does that land?
It's landing good because I do generally feel like I do a pretty decent job of like when I know even just walking away, like minimum, like I know I've done a pretty good job of getting better at that. But whatever it is about the tone has just really like put me back into it. And I get that way with people in general. Like I don't like tones, So it's like now that's just this new thing. It's like I was not prepared for that. Now here we are, like almost starting over, like regaining my center because she's got a tone now. Like she's added this little element of surprise.
Yeah. And that's going to navigate. Yeah. I think she's going to keep surprising you with new little things. And you're just going to be like, I'm ready for this. I got it. Right. And again, how can you be playful with the tone to guide it? It's just like the interruption, right? It needs parameters. It needs some teaching around it. Like, okay, you sound like you really don't want to do what I just asked you to do. I can hear that. And how can we say that in a different way? When mommy doesn't feel, whatever you're feeling, and you can express that to her. Because that's pretty hard to hear.
Yeah.
And then that's a whole different teaching.
Yeah.
You said inside out, like watching movies where this is happening, reading books where this is happening and breaking it down, making games up. You and your husband can play that. Like, how does daddy feel when I interrupt him? Let me show you. Do a little skit. Or the girls can do a skit and see how it feels and then switch it around. So I think playfulness at their age can be very helpful.
Yeah, I need to get more creative, definitely on the play front. That's definitely a thing I gotta work. It's a work in progress for me.
And if this helps, like just speaking to somebody, like, oh my gosh, you're driving me crazy. I don't know what to do. Okay, let's brainstorm.
Right. Yeah.
So have you got a plan? Like what now? What's your answer?
That's really helpful. I definitely want to work on the interruption thing. And it's so funny because I actually looked into Montessori's like preschool when my oldest was little, and then we ended up homeschooling and stuff. But yeah, I definitely want to start implementing that. And then I'm going to just have to start brainstorming how I want to go about when she's in her tone phase. Like in those days, like I think I need to like come up with a plan for me first.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to try the interrupting thing. I think will definitely help me with the flow of work too, because then I get frazzled, and things kind of get off kilter a little bit. So I want to implement that for sure.
Yeah.
And then maybe if I can implement that, she won't feel like she's hearing no so much and feel like, I'm putting her on the back burner, like, so I'm hoping that will kind of give a little ripple effect there.
Yeah. So start with the interrupting and see if it changes the tone. Because then she doesn't have the defenses up. It's like, okay, I've
Right.
been heard, I've been seen, I've been attended
Right.
to and cared for. So
Right.
I'm softening.
Something about human nature is we tend to think that the conditions that we're in will be permanent, right? So when things are going really, really well, we're like, oh, I got it all figured out. And my life is I'm brilliant and we're going to be amazing. And then, of course, that's not how life goes. And then we have more challenging times and we're like, oh my gosh, it's all ruined. It's never going to get better.
And the truth is, nothing lasts. Nothing lasts.
Nothing lasts. So it's so I love this. I love all the moms. Let me just be clear. We're gonna get some dad on the Parent Coach show here soon. But as you started to get underneath what was going on, it was like homeschooling, 2 weeks of snow days. No one had been out of the house. Mom's also working from home. She's doing actually an amazing job, I thought, of creating a structure for all that to be going on. She's got her yellow sign and her red sign and it's like, oh my gosh, where is this attitude coming from all of a sudden? I mean, I love a parent who's going to say, you know what, I just want to throw my child out the window. Haven't we all been there, Delicia?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And to be honest about it, I love that. It's like, then we can get to work because this is what's going on inside my head. Of course, I won't do it outside. This is what I'm feeling inside. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so normal. And I think this, it's wonderful working from home. It's wonderful that we get to be with our kids. It's also exhausting and isolating. And it's like sometimes we just, it's like we like one little puff is going to knock us right off our center. And it can feel like it's about the 4-year-old's attitude when really that was just the steam that kind of like exploded the top of the kettle off.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And I think what's helpful is putting everything into perspective because this mom was aware of the dynamics of the situation.
Yeah.
And also that was even highlighted more because this is the personality of her child. So in the context of being snowed in, having work to do, and then having her child who in another situation would have had this attitude and it wouldn't have been an issue, but having it in and amongst everything else that was happening, that was, like you said, the steam. It was just like, this is too much. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. And now what's wrong with her? Why does she have this attitude? What's wrong with me? What am I doing? And we just get lost in this spiral of stress. Yeah.
I think it's also really normal, especially like you have your first child and they have a certain personality archetype. Maybe they're more, kind of like a fall in line kind of kid, don't need to be reminded. And then another child comes along and completely different personality, completely different energy system. One wanted to co-sleep with you until they're 2. The second one is like, get away from me, like put me in my own crib. Thank you very much. I'm going to bite you.
Yeah.
That was my son. Um, how can we soften our triggers around the differences between our children? Because I do hear like there is often one that tends to be the child that is more triggering.
Yeah. Yeah. The first question is the child, or not a question, maybe just a statement, is the child that tends to be the most triggering is typically the one that is most like us. And so having that in mind when we are triggered by this child, it's also an opportunity just to hold up the mirror. That child is the mirror in human form, but also going in front of a mirror as a physical act and just looking at yourself and saying, what is it about this child
Yeah.
that triggers me to want to throw them? throw them far away from me. And sometimes it's a wonderful opportunity just to step back and see what we're needing. Our children are just like shining a light on, hey mom, you need to take a break. Hey mom, you need some joy in your life. So
Mhm.
just shifting that perspective from this is an invitation.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for me instead of this is just adding stress to my life.
Right. They're doing it to me.
Yeah, you're not doing it to me. You're actually here to teach me.
Mm.
Lots of parents say children are their greatest teachers. And so that triggering child is sometimes the master teacher that you're waiting for.
I've seen Jessica now in some of her coach training sessions and on this call, and I do get the sense that Jess is a fairly feisty, outspoken, big personality human. And I got curious in watching the coaching session how she was responded to when she was obnoxious as a young child, because I would imagine that can bring up some stuff in the hidden blind spots too.
Oh, absolutely. Those are those patterns that we either are aware of or not aware of. Sometimes those are those personalities that we think we were born with. And when we take time to look at it, it's like, oh no, actually, this is something that I picked up. It was an inheritance. And when we really become aware of it in our lives, then we can stop and say, do I want to keep this? I don't really like it when I hear it from my child. So perhaps they don't like it either. And how can I shift my language? How can I soften my response when I am stressed?
Mm.
And so we have the opportunity to, we might default back to an attitude or a tone if our child comes in while we're in the middle of an email, and we can just pause and, oh, that's not really how I wanted to speak to you. I'm sorry. Can I try again? And in that way, we're teaching and modeling to our children how it is that we want to be spoken to. But we have to step up first. You always say this, leaders go first. So we got to step up first and show our children what it is that we appreciate in terms of their communication with us.
I love that. I was blown away. I want to get into your coaching brain for a second. So I feel like we beat this drum every week. All behavior is an expression of a need, and whether that need has been met or unmet. And I don't know if you remember, but I'm curious what like honed you in as a coach right on that safety piece. Was it something that you heard or felt?
Yeah, I think in her expressing that this is not something that happens often or it's happening more often now, it made me question, well, what's changed in this 4-year-old's life for her to have more of a stronger will, to step up, to stand up, to speak out? And I think immediately when I asked that question, Jess didn't take a second. And she's like, it's her dad. And so questioning what's the relationship there?
Hmm.
If this 4-year-old doesn't feel safe, then their brain is automatically going into a protective state, a defensive state, and that might be the tone that they use to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And she may not know why she's protecting herself or what from, but her body knows that something here doesn't feel safe. It could be unexpressed judgment, right? It could be an eye roll. It could be any kind of nonverbal communication that the parent's giving that the child's body picks up on. And
Yeah.
so the tone comes out.
This conversation takes a tremendous amount of humility and vulnerability as parents to look at. Are we a safe person for our child? Because we get to recognize that we may feel completely safe, right? Like I'm yelling, but I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm just yelling. Or I'm slamming things on the table, but the child's in the other room. And I think it's important to kind of go back to being a child and having big people with bigger bodies and power over us, driving the car aggressively or, stomping or huffing or stonewalling, and all of these things that are so normalized in our lineage, in our cultures, do actually create a loss of the sense of safety for children, they don't have the lived experience to know that, the glass being slammed on the counter isn't going to hurt them. It feels very scary.
Yeah,
And we
definitely.
all do
Absolutely.
it. We all do it. So I think there's an invitation, like, we're not going to stop. None of us are going to become perfect people who never, like, have a reactive moment, but how can we start to build skills and tools to lessen them and to minimize it? And then most importantly, to repair, which you so beautifully modeled just a few minutes ago. And I want to unpack how you did it, Delisha, because what you said, I don't know if you remember, you're like, "Ooh, I don't like how I just said that. Can we have a do-over? Let's try again." And what I loved about how you modeled that is there was no self-flagellation in your delivery. It wasn't like, "I messed up. I'm a terrible mother. I la, la, la." It was just like, "Oh, you know what? We're all people here. Sometimes we're
Yeah.
gonna say things we don't mean. Let's try again."
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, it is so good. And I love what you said is checking in whether we're a safe person from our child's point of view, from their lived experience. And it reminded me of something I did with my son, which was I asked him to draw me when I'm angry. And he drew the most terrifying picture of a bear. And I was like, whoa, is that really what I look like? And so we unpacked the drawing and he said why the teeth are sharp and why it's so big. And it really gave me an idea of what I look like when I'm angry. So all these things you mentioned, slamming doors or driving the car aggressively or storming off away from him when I'm trying to just calm myself down, gave me an idea of what his little brain is thinking and feeling and starting to believe when he sees me react like that. And when I can come back and say, oh my gosh, I was so stressed, didn't choose the best way to express it, I'm going to try again. And in both ways, I'm teaching him what it looks like to handle stress in two different ways and then choosing the better way. Next time, and now he can stop me and say, Mom, choose the other one. Choose
Yeah,
the other one.
the bear is coming out.
Yeah, the bear's coming. Yeah,
The
yeah.
bear is coming out. How so as parents, we get mad, right? We get angry. What are healthy ways to express that anger when we feel it?
Ooh, depends on the person and who you are and what works for you. So it's an experiment, I think. But I know that anger lives in the shoulders, the arms, the hands. And so if you can move those parts of your body, that's one way to get it out. Also, the throat. So the vocal cords growling, just that could be I'm angry, right? And these are practices we could do around our children without instilling any fear or taking away their sense of safety by saying, when I'm angry, I just feel like screaming. You want to join me? Or putting on a song while we're in the car because there's traffic. Let's sing really loud to this. And we can get it out in a safe way while still expressing our anger. So there are so many ways to do it. But yeah, vocal cords, shoulders, arms, hands, just like shaking it out.
Yeah, just like, I'm shaking off my anger. And
Yeah.
then is it okay, kind of once we're like calm, cool, to say, I noticed I was angry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Naming it for our children, because when we leave our children without a story for our behavior or a story for our stress, they're left to make it up on their own. And with their limited experience and information accessible to them and brain development, they make up stories that are typically around self blame. So I'm bad. I'm the reason mommy gets so mad.
Mhm.
I should just keep quiet and not ask for anything or say anything. And they left there sitting, and then the story grows and goes with them into their adulthood.
Get more
Until we
evidence,
sit.
more evidence, and more evidence that that story is true because that's how the brain works.
Yeah. And it just takes us to say, well, I was really stressed earlier. I chose a few choice words, which I don't want to use. And now that I thought about it, this is how I could have handled that situation. Right. And it has nothing to do with you. And as you said, I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to apologize to you, and we can move forward. Next time, maybe you can help me when you see it happening. And when it happens to you, I'll point it out to you as well.
Love it. The final piece of this conversation, I mean, there's so many Montessori families in our community. I think Montessori and Jai are like peanut butter and jelly. I like to joke, like, we Montessori the parents, they Montessori the kids.
I love that.
But what I loved about having my kids were in Montessori through 8th grade, and it's life-changing. And I learned so much as a parent from witnessing those classrooms, because they literally take the time to patiently teach children how to succeed, like in the most careful, repetitive, community held ways. And we forget as parents, like, well, how would a 3-year-old know how to interrupt when they see interrupting happening all around them every day, right? Like, it's kind of just like how the world works.
Yeah.
And so do you have any other like favorite Montessori? I love the hand on the shoulder. Oh, and with Miles, when he got older with the video game, I adopted the hand on the shoulder.
Yeah.
So go in. I need your eye, just like you said, but the hand on the shoulder. Wait, my mom. And then he'd put his hand and he'd get to a pause. Yes. So good.
It works both ways. Yes, that is probably one of my favorite ones. And as you demonstrated it here, it just reminds me again of this map that we use, head, heart, hands. And when it comes to our children, it's hands, heart, head. So we start with that body to body connection. And there's this beautiful question Rebecca asks is, what is your child's flavor of connection? So I like to think of what does my child like? Do they like their hair to be combed? Do they want a hand on their shoulder? Do they like a little cuddle before they stop what they're doing and turn around? Hey, mom, what's up? So yeah, there's so many ways to connect with your child in that way. And to your point of how do our children learn life skills if we don't teach it to them? And in the Montessori system, Montessori school, we're teaching them things like how to answer a telephone. And that's play.
Yeah.
This is the Marley residence. This is William speaking. How can I help you? And they have so much fun doing that. So that's another fun one we used to do. And the best one is how to enter a room. So we role play how to knock on the door, wait for someone to answer, open the door, hi, and come into a room. That was another fun one we had at school. I love those.
Oh, so good. Talisa, you're such a gem. I adore you.
Thank you, Kiva.